Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. It's your boy D Black coming back with another SmackDown review. All right, SmackDown tonight. Whew, Lord, it was not a good show. It was not a good show. I mean, I understand they're trying to get these element of surprises and stuff to bring and build up, WrestleMania, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. But man. But anyway, let's get it going. We have Randy Orton that comes out to the ring. Randy Orton's taking Cody Rhodes, he's saying, hey, to the people in St. Louis, and he's saying, what do you want to talk about? And he's telling the people in St. Louis that, St. Louis is his hometown and everything, and that's where, he started from and stuff when he was a kid and everything, and he's telling them the next time that, he comes back to St. Louis is that he'll be a 15-time world champion and stuff, And then he goes on to saying that what he's doing, he's not doing it for himself. He's doing it for the six people that were in front, which was his family and stuff. And he says after WrestleMania, you know, he's gonna be the world champion, and that Cody Rhodes is gonna go home from WrestleMania 42, empty-handed. And then he goes on to talking about, as far as hearing voices in his head, and he says Cody Rhodes is hearing voices in his head, and everything that Stephanie McMahon, told Cody last week, was true. That Cody can't beat him, and he's saying that Cody can't beat him and stuff. And then, it goes on and he says that Cody is not a killer, you know, that Cody doesn't have what it takes, as far as, beating him. Then he said, well, Cody, woke up inside him that there's no putting it back to bed. So those voices in his head that he has talking to him, is, oh, man. And then Cody comes out and he hits the ring, and then him and Randy Orton, they start brawling, brawling, brawling. Then Pat McAfee comes into the ring and he kicks Cody between the legs. And now we have Pat McAfee, has turned into a heel. Wow. And stuff. But I don't even know if it's even heelish because the fact is everything that Pat McAfee, said to Cody was kind of true. He's saying that look, things since Cody's been around, they forgot about the people that were back in the day, where you had the Rocks, Stone Cold Steve, and he was naming all the areas and stuff like that. And he was saying, that Randy is the one that's going to be the one who restores and brings back, I guess the passion of how the business is concerned and everything, and then he also tells Cody that the person that Randy was talking on the phone was him, you know, and then Pat McAfee said he told Randy to go out and kill everybody, you know, because he's the only one that's going to be able to save the business and stuff as far as wrestling is concerned, you know. And then they, they kind of walked off, and they start booing Cody as Cody tries to start getting up and everything. And then, Pat, as they're leaving, Pat McAfee, telling Randy, that he's going to change, that Randy is going to be the one that changes the business, you know. And they're taking the GOAT, which is, they're taking the GOAT spot, which they say is Cody Rhodes, and stuff like that. And then they're going to change everything and make it right. So if that's a hint of that something's about to happen as far as Triple H is concerned, so we can get, better storylines and, better wrestling and, stuff put together as far as, these matches and promos are concerned. I mean, I'm all for it. And everything that Pat McAfee said, was true. I mean, it's sad, but we're missing out. I mean, this WrestleMania is gonna be dead. I mean, they put matches together that there's no storylines, going with them and stuff. So people will be lost. You got these bots that will look and say, "Oh, this is magnificent. This is just fine. I like this," and it's not, and it's just not. It's just something that was put together, And as far as wrestling is concerned, not only do you have the storyline as far as being, worked out, to get that pop, everything in the ring, they have to also tell the story in the ring. Some of these matches have just been, ooh, All right, let's move on. So we got Rhea Ripley against Michin. This match is going to be going on because, Rhea and Jade, they've been having their little thing and stuff like that. So the match goes on. I guess it's a pretty good match. I mean, so far, pretty decent. I had to give it to Michin. Michin really, she's been there for a while. So she has some good ring skills. Rhea, they, had a pretty good match. And then Rhea catches Michin, with I don't even know what that was, but then Michin just taps out. Anyway, Jay gets involved in the ring, and then all of a sudden, BFAB hits Rhea in the back, and then the number game, and they beat down on Rhea, and then out comes Io Sky, and Io Sky comes out, to help and everything, and so. Um, they all get out, the ring. B5, Meechin, and Jay, they, lead the ring and stuff like that. So, and then we get, Matt Cardona talking to Alister Black, and Alister Black saying that, Randy got what he was talking about and everything. So Randy's being himself. And then, Lena tells Matt Cardona, you know, that he hasn't found himself. And Matt Cardona said that, he is who he is and stuff. So, we'll see if anything changes with Matt Cardona messing with, Alistair Black. So, but anyway, then we got Solo Sokoa, in the MFTs and stuff, and the matches coming up, and Solo Sokoa is, um, asking who's going to be stepping up, to fight Uncle Howdy, as far as their thing with the White Six are going. And Tama Tunga is, telling Solo, why do they have to fight for, that lantern? He said that the lantern actually has been holding them back and stuff and making, Solo act different and everything that's been going on with them, hasn't been right ever since they, had that lantern. And so who is he talking to? Tama Tunga is kind of making, making sense and stuff like that. And then since he's been talking, Solo Sikoa says, well, Tama Tunga will be the one to go up against Uncle Howdy, and he tells Tama Tunga, not to mess the match up and stuff. And then before the match, we get, Kathy Kelly, Rio and Io Sky, and they're talking about, WrestleMania and how they're friends and that there's nothing that's gonna, come between them as far as friends. So I think something's about to happen. Because Jade, I'm sure when she gets out there, that Michin and B-Fab is going to be there also. And I know Io Sky is going to go out there and probably be ringside with Rhea. And something is going to happen with that. Okay? Remember, all of last year, Rhea was going at Io Sky for that championship. So, I don't know. I'm just, just speculating right now. And it could be again, this time Io going after Rhea, you know, for the title. Hmm. Let's see what happens. Then we get the match with Uncle Howdy, and Tama Tunga. The match is okay. I mean, Tama Tunga was holding his own and stuff. Actually, he kind of had Uncle Howdy beat. Howdy caught him with the claw in the mouth and stuff, and then then Solo Sokoa comes out, you know, um, to the ring, with the lantern, and he looks like he was about to hit, Uncle Howdy, and the referee, kind of stops him and stuff, and then Tama Tunga, came up, next to the ring and was telling Solo that he told him to stay back. He wanted to have this match on his own and stuff. And then, as he was about ready, as he turned around, he gets caught with his sister Abigail, and it's over after that. And then after the match was over, Solo, was trying to tell him, tell Tama Tonga that he was out there to try to help him, and again, Tama Tonga said that, he didn't need his help or anything like that. And then Tama Tonga snatches the lantern, from Solo Sokoa, and he puts it there right at the ring, at the edge of the ring and stuff. And Uncle Howdy gets, the lantern, and he walks, back. He holds it, and he goes back with it. So Uncle Howdy has the, White Six have the lantern back. See what happens after that. And then Kit Wilson, we have Kit Wilson and the Miz and everything. Kit Wilson is, talking to the Miz and talking about, about the curse, that Danhausen put on him and stuff like that. And the Miz tells him that there's no curse and there's no such thing as a curse and stuff like that. And then R-Truth, tells Kit Wilson and the Miz if they're there to sign, papers, for applications to become a part of the New Judgment Day, you know, that they're not taking any more applications for it. And then the Miz, tells them that they're not out there, for that and everything, you know. And then the Miz takes it as the fact that, not the Miz, but R-Truth, takes it, as a challenge because the Miz was just talking all kind of smack, and then R-Truth was, took it as a challenge. So he says that, okay, well, Your Honor, you got to, challenge accepted, and that they have a match, for the tag team titles, and he would let Damian Priest, and Nick Aldis know and stuff. So, oh man, that's crazy. I kind of like some of the comedy that they have in this, but sometimes it's over the top. But this is okay with R-Truth. And then we have Sami Zayn, talking to Nick Aldis, asking Nick Aldis, if he can get Pyro, as far as part of his intro and stuff. And and then Nick Aldis tells him that yeah, he can get it and everything. Then we come out with Trick Williams, his music plays and everything, and he comes out with Little Yachty and everything, and he says that he's coming out there, just to celebrate, his first match at WrestleMania. And I say, Trick Williams really, deserves it. And at this time, he's thinking, wrestling against, Sami Zayn for the belt and everything, and then he's asking Little Yachty, that everybody else has their little star and everything, mentioning Jelly Bean and some other stars that have been in the ring with some of the other wrestlers. He says, so why he can't have his own little star? And he asked Little Yachty, to, represent him, at WrestleMania and stuff, and Little Yachty says, yeah, and everything. Then Sammy says, says that, about Sammy and everything, that he's going to beat him. And he says that when he gets on the top rope and stuff, after beating Sammy, and then winning the U.S. title, he said that he's going to ask for them to play Sami Zayn's Pyro because Trick Williams, runs SmackDown. And then the power goes off, and out comes Sami Zayn, and basically, Sami Zayn's coming out talking smack, and then Trick Williams reminds him that the fact that he has that U.S. title is because Trick Williams is the one that helped him get it and stuff, as far as, interfering in the match with Carmelo Hayes and stuff. And then Carmelo Hayes comes out, and he starts talking and everything, and all of a sudden, all this ended up is that, Carmelo Hayes, wanted his rematch and everything because he figures that because Trick Williams interfered. He lost the title. He doesn't get a match, at WrestleMania. And so, a match was set, for them to have Carmelo Hayes and Sami Zayn go at it for the U.S. title later on, into the night. And then Solo and Tama Tunga, are backstage talking about, the landing and saying that they didn't need the landing and stuff like that, and that they need to get things together and stuff so they can go for the titles that Solo says that, that they were after, and then Solo says, well, true. So after, they take care of the Wyatt Six, and I don't know why he's still on that, once they take care of the Y6, then they'll take care of, the business of going after titles and stuff, which makes no sense, zero sense. Then we have Alistair Black going up against Matt Cardona. And I'm going to have to tell you that, Matt Cardona, I mean, this match was pretty decent. It was a pretty decent match and stuff. And, yeah, they're mid-carders and stuff like that. But I think Matt Cardona, he's in between that mid and probably a little bit more than mid and stuff. I mean, I guess soon if he stays long in with the company, I'm sure he'll have one of the mid titles. But and then Alistair Black also, so I guess they did good. It was a good match for mid carders and stuff. But anyway, Alistair Black hits Matt Cardona with the black mass and wins the match and stuff. And then we have our Truth and Damian Priest, and Damian Priest is asking our Truth why he gave a title shot to to Kit Wilson and the Miz and stuff, and then he was talking about to Oscar, and he's calling Danhausen Oscar because the paint and stuff on his face and everything like that. Putting the curse. Said that he put a curse on the Miz and Kit Wilson, that there should be no problem with him and Damian going out there winning winning the match and stuff. And then we have Drew McIntyre promo, talking about Jacob Fatu and stuff. And then we have the match with Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss going against Bayley and Lyra Valkyria. We all know that they're part of the Fatal Four Way, which is going to be at WrestleMania. But we have this match with them anyway, and I'm sure they should have or could have put somebody else. I don't know. It's just crazy. But anyway, after the match, they hit natural selection, on Bayley and Lyra. And, Charlotte and Alexa, they win the match. And then after the match is over, Nia Jax and Lash Legend come in the ring and destroy both teams. They destroy both teams. And then, we get another backstage with, Kit Wilson and The Miz is telling, Kit Wilson that there's no curse, and tell him, and then Kit is telling The Miz that he's toxic and stuff. And The Miz says, when they win, that match, that he's going to tell Danhausen to take that curse and stick it up his, and then, because Danhausen came out, and then he told Danhausen, I'm sorry, yeah, he told Danhausen that, hey, look, when the match is over and they win the match and become tag team titles, he's going to tell Danhausen to he can shove his curse up his up his butt and everything, but when he turns around, Danhausen is gone. And then we get the match with Drew and Damian Priest versus Kit Wilson and The Miz. The match was okay and everything. I mean, it was all right. And then Damian Priest hits Kit Wilson with the South of Heaven and everything. And as the match is going, let's put it this way: as the match is going, Danhausen comes out and stuff, and he's in the ring. The referee tries to get him out of the ring. Then Danhausen curses the referee, and the Miz hits R-Truth with oh man, the with the Miz's move. I can't even remember what the move is. Oh, that's crazy. But anyway, as the referee goes to count 1, 2, 3, his arm gets stuck. Then Truth grabs Kit Wilson, and then he gets him with South of Heaven. And then the referee's armed okay because he uses the other one that counts 1, 2, 3. And R-Truth and Damian Priest retain the belt. And then we get Cody Rhodes coming back out. And he starts talking about Pat McAfee, and that Pat McAfee will get his receipt for what he did and everything. And he said that, basically he told Randy Orton and Pat McAfee that they can kiss his tail, but he's going to get them back as far as, WrestleMania is concerned. And then we get the match with Sami Zayn and Carmelo Hayes. And this match was whoever wins will meet Trick Williams as far as WrestleMania is concerned. The match was pretty good. I mean, yeah, I mean, it was pretty decent. Carmelo Hayes did his thing like as always. Sami Zayn did his. Trick Williams was down there, at the announcer table, but he had no influence in the match. What was going on and stuff. Um, the referee got in the way because Carmelo hurt his leg, well, hurt his thigh or around his knee or leg or whatever and stuff. And as the referee was asking him, if he was okay, Sami Zayn hits Carmelo Hayes with the Haluna kick and gets a 1, 2, 3, retains the belt, and he you know is where he defeats Carmelo Hayes. So that means he's going to be facing you know Trick Williams, you know at WrestleMania. So I guess WrestleMania is going to be kind of okay. I mean, I think we could have better storylines of what's been going on and stuff, but it is what it is, and I can just honestly say that Pat McAfee told a lot of truth at the beginning of the match and stuff. So, and then we get Trick Williams and Sami Zayn in the ring, and they're talking, smack, Lil Yachty's talking to Jack and everything, but it should be a good match between him and Sami Zayn. I don't know why this is the main event, here because the match with Sami and um, Trick Williams is like it's crazy. Trick Williams, jumps Sami Zayn and stuff as he turns his back, to go towards Lil Yachty, and Trick Williams takes him out. So we'll see what happens, at WrestleMania. But anyway, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, leave a comment. Again, thank you for watching. God bless. Deuces. And I'll see you on the next video. Thank you.